Take real estate as a shot or as a fully stocked cooler. This is the 5 o'clock somewhere Real Estate Investor Podcast. We're bringing common sense back to real estate investment. So crack open your beverage of choice, sit back and relax, and allow us to learn you a thing or two.
Welcome to this 5 o'clock Summer Real Estate Podcast. Today, we've got Joe Garner in the studio with us today. Joe Garner is a direct lender. We're going to talk about some specific properties we have, and Joe's going to make some recommendations on type of financing that can be available for those and interest rates. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
We are sponsored by Title Assurance and Escrow, a title company here in Cordova that does all of our closings, title work, escrows, and we only use Title Assurance and Escrow. That relationship is very important because we can get things done for our investors quickly and easily. So to speak with Title Assurance and Escrow, call 901-737-3332. Ask for Chris or April.
All right. Welcome back. In the studio with me is Jeff McNett and Joe Garner. And Nick Gibson, one of our other team members. He's actually with the fire department, so he's on shift today, so he's not with us today. But we do have Jeff's lovely wife, Audrey, or as we call her, Angel, in the studio with us. She's going to be doing a live feed for us. Hopefully people will be nice to us when they send us questions. So, Joe, tell us a little bit about your company.
Okay. I'm in the lending business, the mortgage business, Brett, and we are direct lenders with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and all of those traditional products. We also have the ability to do some outside-of-the-box products for people, low documentation, some special stuff for investors. So it's an exciting time to be in the lending business. I'm a mortgage loan officer. Before
we get into the details, have you seen an uptick in business with the interest rate drop? I know we had this discussion, interest rates and the amount that they dropped doesn't really have a huge impact on payments for investors, but it has some impact, but not
It does.
huge. But are you seeing an increase in business or activity?
Right after the Fed went down, we had a lot of calls because a lot of people believe that mortgage rates are tied to the Fed. They're really not so much tied to the Fed. The good news is mortgage rates had started going down a few months ago.
Right.
And we're hanging in and around a 15-month low, Brett, on these mortgage rates. To give you an example, last October 2023, we were at on a residential first-time home buyer, all of that, 8.25% on a 30-year fixed rate. Today, we're in the sixes. So, I mean, it's a huge difference whether you're buying the house to live in it or whether you're buying the house as an investment. Now, your investment interest rate is going to be a little higher, but it's still commiserately lower than what it was a year ago.
Now, I read something, and I don't know if the math is correct on this, but it stated that if someone buying a $400,000 house, if the interest, the rate goes down 100 basis points or an entire point, that would save them, I think it was $40 a month on their mortgage.
Mm-hmm. I did the numbers the other day for a client. If you're dropping the loan amount by $10,000, that's going to save you about $60 or $70 a month.
Okay.
Interest rates are going to save you a little bit too per month. So,
but like $20, $40,
not a whole lot, but a little.
Because I talk a lot. Let's face it, we get a lot of investors that we call them bandwagon investors. They just kind of sit there and wait for everybody else to jump, and then they jump. Smart investors buy right now, knowing that with the potential of an economic turnaround and interest rates coming down, that values and rents are going to start to increase.
Right.
And that you could take advantage of growth in equity, growth in rents. So buying now is a good idea. And I always hear the same thing. Well, but I'm waiting on interest rates to come down. But then when you realize, well, if it goes down a whole point, you're going to save $25 a month. Is that worth giving up a potential $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 equity jump next year?
That's a very good point, Brett. And there are some formulas out there on cost to wait. And right now, if the forecasts are correct, and when mortgage rates drop, home prices are going to spike upward. We're already in a shortage of inventory situation. When you lower the amount of supply of homes for sale and you increase the demand, what does Economics 101 tell you? Prices on those homes are going to go up. You're not going to have the selection.
Depends on your political viewpoint, I think. But yes, in reality, that is the case.
Well, I guess what she's saying is you'd rather buy a $400,000 house at 7% than the same $650,000 house at 6.5% at the end of the day. So
right. Well, that's my point.
If you're sitting on the fence, now's the time to jump.
Absolutely,
and
because
make that deal.
You save yourself $25 a month on an interest rate. Great. That adds up to what? $300 a year. But you waited till March to buy because
right.
the rate went down a point, and that house that you could have bought for $100,000 is now $125,000.
That's a very good point.
Why wouldn't you just buy it at $100? Take the leap,
mm-hmm.
and then guess what? Your equity goes up. Rates drop 3 points. Go refinance it. Get your cash flow up, but you've got all the equity.
There you go. We have a saying for that, Brett. It's marry the house and date the interest rate. So
there you go.
If you can buy the house today at the price it is today, even if the rate's a little higher, you own the house. You're sitting on the equity that's growing. Presumably, it's going to be growing. And you can always refinance, give yourself a raise later on when rates get down low enough. Because
that's actually the issue, is that cash flow is affected by interest rate because it lessens your cash flow.
Right.
But if you take the whole scheme of the payment and all your expenses, and instead of $275, you're only making $250, but you can gain $15,000, $20,000 equity in a very short period of time through the recovery of the market, what makes more sense?
Right.
Right. And I preach it. I don't know if anybody's listening. I don't think anybody listens to me. They listen to Jeff, but not me.
There's a lot of people sitting on the fence right now.
Yeah.
Keep preaching.
Well, I'm glad you validated my belief. Thank you for that. So hopefully the people that are out there listening will listen to an expert and not just because they're not listening to me.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. And I would rather have the selection of homes that I want and not have to compete with several people and keep having to pay way over list price just to get a house. I mean, especially if you're an investor, you've got to buy it right with the right terms in order to make money, at least over time.
All right. So most of you know that our patriarch, the guy that kind of founded this team and designed the system we use and taught all of us how to do this business the right way and handle our investors, was Glenn Green. He's a good friend of mine who passed away last May. So Richard and I have been talking, and Richard's kind of a weird British guy, so he thought that he could reach the other side where Glenn is and see if we can get him to interact with us on our podcast show, because he used to be on our show. So we've done that. I don't know how this is going to go, but let's see.
Just when you thought it was safe, just when you thought you should hide, here comes the voice of Glenn Green from the other side. Just when you thought it was safe, just when you thought you should hide, here comes the voice of Glenn Green from the other side.
Hey guys, it's Glenn. Now that's right, from the other side. Richard reached out to me, so I thought I'd stop by and say hello. Hey, what's up, boys?
Hey, Glenn, how you doing, man? It's good to hear from you. It's been a long time.
What's going on, Glenn?
How's the other side going? Everything good over there?
I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. Not much else to do around here, if you know what I mean, but I was wondering if y'all knew. Did you know if you invest in a strip club, your pole cleaner's deductible on your taxes? Can you believe that?
No, I did not know that, but now that I think about it, that makes total sense. I don't know if any of our investors invest in strip clubs, but Glenn, I appreciate that advice, because we may, I don't know if I really want to list and sell strip clubs to my investors. But Jeff, did you know that pole cleaner's deductible?
I did not know that.
So every week, I guess, Glenn, you're going to come back and check in with us from time to time. And
yeah, man, I'll do that when I can.
We wanted to call on you some more and understand what things are like on the other side, and have you give us your wisdom from the other side, because you are the patriarch that designed our system and how we do business with our investors.
I've been listening to the past few episodes you guys have been putting out, and
what do you think?
Quite frankly, I've been disappointed you haven't called on me more for my insight.
Well, that was Jeff's fault. I wanted to call on you, but Jeff and Richard wouldn't let me.
Now I'll let you off just this once, but if it happens again, I'll have to burn down all of your houses. Capiche?
Well, you don't have to be that extreme, man. I mean, interest rates have come down finally. So I know they were, when you were physically here, they were pretty high and business was kind of rough, but interest rates have come down. Jeff has actually started selling some houses. He's got some investors and builders he's working on. Nick's doing well. So everything seems to be going well.
Ah, okay. That's good. That's good.
Keep over there. We'll get in touch with you next week. We'd like to have you on and give us another investor tip, man. Thanks for coming in.
No sweat, buddy. It's always good to check in. This has been another segment of Investor Tips from the Other Side with me, Glenn Green. Back to you, boys.
All right, well, let's get into what our main topic is going to be. Let's take property. Now, this property is one from our builder. It's 4476 Sunnyview. It's in Fraser, 38127. Mm-hmm. Brand new home. It's not finished yet. It's already sold, but it's not finished. I take it back. No, this is sold. We sold this one for $162,500. It is expected to rent MHA for, is this correct, $1,700 or is it more than that?
$1,700.
All right. Now, it's brand new with a 1-year bill of warranty, so your all-in cost is $162,500. That's what you're in it for. I did the insurance and taxes, roughly your expenses per month with insurance, taxes, management, and putting $200 a month in a reserve account. Oh, window got broken. Oh, I didn't, plumbing leak, whatever it is. And that gives you a cash-on-cash return. And let's clarify, cash-on-cash means is no different if you just plop down cash, bought the house. Here's what your return is of $1,022 per month out of your rent after your expenses. That gives you a 7.55 cap rate, which on a rental property after expenses, 7.55 cap rate in the first year. On a brand new home, needs no maintenance and everything's covered under warranty. So this does not calculate what's your mortgage payment. And I've said it many times on this show. Joe and I talked about this as lunch, and you did agree with me at that time. I'm assuming you still do. Is that your mortgage payment is not an expense. Your principal portion of your mortgage payment is not an expense. The bank gave you the money. You're paying back the money. It's a wash. It's in and out. So you don't really calculate that into your cap rate. You do calculate it into your cash flow, but that money is not coming out of your pocket because the house is rented. So your tenant's basically paying your expenses and the profit that you're making on the property, which in this case gives you, Joe, in this situation, what do you think the cash flow would be on that $1,022 take home if they got a current mortgage today?
You said how much is the rent again?
Rent's $1,700.
Okay, so if you sold it for $162, looking at your taxes and insurance estimates, it looks like your payment's going to be around $1,200 or $1,300-ish PITI.
Really?
Yep, somewhere in there. If you sold it for $162.
Okay.
And you're getting how much for rent? $1,700?
$1,700.
Okay, so you're going to have a positive cash flow going in immediately.
Of how much?
About $450.
Okay. All right. So it's producing the numbers we need it to produce.
Oh, more than, yes.
Right. So that's why I want to talk about this so much, is because we've never been able to tell people, well, I don't know what your mortgage payment's going to be, so I don't know how much cash flow you're going to actually take home. But in this case, you're saying that out of that cash flow, someone could make $400 a month off a brand new home.
Right.
With a 1-year bill of warranty. Mm-hmm. And is that including putting $200 away for the...
No, you're going to have to take that money out of the $400.
So
but you're still making a positive cash flow.
You're putting $200 a month in the bank. You're not spending that, and you're putting $200 a month in your pocket. The smart move would be to put $400 a month in your account until you get enough built up, and then make sure you've protected yourself for the following year when those warranties start to wear off. Now, all your major components have warranties, extended warranties, but the bill of warranty expires after a year.
Yes. And this is on a Fannie Mae loan.
You need to roll all that money back in.
You should.
To the
and we've talked about that. Jeff's proponent of take 100% of your cash flow and pay down that mortgage as fast as possible.
Yeah, get your reserve built up for the repairs and maintenance, and then just start paying the principal on those mortgages down.
Because the sooner you own that home free and clear, guess what? The more cash flow you're putting in your pocket, and the less money you've got to put aside.
Well, and just for our investors out there that are scratching their heads saying, well, how much do I need to pay extra and how much am I going to save? On a 30-year loan, which is what I'm calculating on this one, Brett, if they made one just principal and interest payment per year, one extra principal and interest payment, not including taxes and insurance, just one a year On a 30-year loan, if you start immediately, you're going to save about 7 years. It's not eliminate 7 years
But
off
if you
the
take
mortgage.
the $200 and pay $24 a month, you're actually doubling
That's
that.
right.
So you actually could do this in 15 years or 16 years.
You could calculate it on an amortization schedule really easily on how fast do you want to pay off this mortgage.
Right.
But paying it in the beginning, because of the way the amortized payments work, an amortized payment, you're going to pay a portion of that principal and interest toward principal and a portion toward interest. Well, in the very beginning of the loan, you're only going to pay a very small amount toward principal.
Right.
Almost all of the principal and interest payment is applied to interest. So you can do the math. In the beginning of the loan, you can pay a little bit and get rid of a lot of interest if you start in the beginning. But if you start at the end, almost all of your principal and interest is principal. You're really not gaining anything.
Well, let me ask you this question then. All right, we understand that the investor that buys this house can cash flow it.
Absolutely.
And if they do it right, they can pay this thing off in 15, 16 years. And guess what? By that time, you've got a $240,000 house paid for that's probably at that point producing $2,500 a month.
Right.
Do that 10 times, right? And then 15 years, if you're 30 and you're 45, guess what you're doing? You're retiring.
Beautiful.
It's not hard to do.
Yes.
People make it complicated. I would say the seminar experts around the country that charge you money to give you their great ideas, they're making it more complicated than it is. So let me ask you this. So they're buying this home, 162.5. They're going to get a loan. What is their loan to value? How much cash do they need to have in the bank to close this loan?
Okay. Well, in the mortgage world, we're all built on risk levels. So assuming you have a good credit score, something over 740,
most
maybe
of our investors
780.
have good credit score, make good livings. Right? You know, we have a few that have good credit score, make a modest living, but have stacked away some money in the bank.
Okay. Well, if we went the traditional route, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, usually your rate is lower than what you're going to get on a low document loan, low documentation outside the box loan. So let's talk about Fannie and Freddie. Fannie Mae has a program where, as an investor, single family home, you can put down 15%. That's all you have to put down. You have to pay a little mortgage insurance per month until you can pay that loan down and also have the value go up over time. You can do that. So that's a great opportunity for investors. I've got some investors I work with on the mortgage side that start out that way. Once you get into a situation where you're holding quite a bit of real estate, or you're self-employed, you have a complicated tax return, then it becomes more advantageous to pay maybe a little bit more on the rate, maybe a little bit more on points, and do a low documentation loan. And Jeff and Brett, I just want to say, we talked about this the other day. One of the trends that I'm seeing are that investors are looking to insulate themselves from risk. So those investors who own a lot of property, they're typically putting those properties into an LLC. Well,
Personal risk is what you're talking
personal risk. So Fannie and Freddie will not do a loan that's secured on a property owned by an LLC. At that point, we go to the non-traditional mortgage route. We call it DSCR, debt service coverage ratio. And the only place we're going to look for income is on the lease. We just make sure that the PITI payment does not exceed the amount of the lease amount they get.
Can I interject? Because
Sure.
you said something to me the other day that blew my mind. What do they consider in that PITI for determining if the rent covers the note?
Okay, that's a great question.
Because I thought it was all these different expenses and what your net was, but you said that's not true.
No, on the DSCR, you're right. We are only looking at the principal and interest, taxes and insurance, a homeowners association fee per month if there is one. So we're just looking at the debt service on that subject property into what that property is bringing in gross rent income. Now, the DSCR programs I work on, most of them are 1-to-1 ratio. They want to make sure that at least your lease income is covering your debt service. There are programs through DSCR where even if you're upside down, you're not making money right now, they'll still give you a loan, but you're going to pay a higher rate for that. But they're out there.
Is there a limit to how many DSCR loans you can hold? Because I know I think Fannie Mae, you have up to 10.
Right. The point that I wanted to make about those is that these outside of the box DSCR lenders will do a loan on a property held by an LLC. These non-traditional lenders on DSCR, they'll do a loan that's maybe not just a traditional rental situation. They'll do midterm rentals, short-term rentals, Airbnbs.
As long as you show that you can get the cash flow to pay the note, that's it.
They'll do the loan.
But do they cap you at how many DSCR loans you can have? Like,
some lenders will per lender.
But there's no standard rule that says you can only do 10.
There's no standard rule on the outside of the box loans. If one lender says, hey, I'll only do 5 for one investor, well, we'll do the 5 with them, and then we'll go to a different investor and do another 5. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, on the other hand, these government-backed or quasi-government-backed loan programs will limit you on how many financed properties you can own. So it really, Brett, to determine which financing vehicle we're going to use for your investors, we're going to do some discovery questions. We're going to find out where they are. Are they beginning? What type of documentation do they have? What type of property do they have? To determine, do we want to start out with a Fannie and Freddie, maybe with a lower rate, maybe lower move-in cost, or do we want to start immediately with an outside-of-the-box type
but
financing package?
If you can go Fannie, what you're suggesting is go Fannie Freddie first.
Yeah, sure. If you're going to hold the property,
right.
Yeah, lesser
and then
interest
once you
rate.
cap out with Fannie Freddie, then you can convert over to DSCR.
Correct. That is correct.
So Fannie and Freddie might be a better option for a new investor that's not an S corp or an LLC.
Right.
He's going to start out with 1 or 2 properties at a time.
Is there a difference in cash flow out of pocket for closing? Yeah, if I'm making a choice and I've got to bring $20,000 down for the Fannie Freddie, but DSCR, do I have to bring more? Is it about the same?
Again, based on risk levels, credit scores, and that kind of thing. Fannie Mae is the only quasi-government backed loan that only requires 15% down from an investor. Most all of your DSCR investors are going to require a minimum of 20% down.
Okay. So maybe Fannie Mae's cheaper all the way around.
Absolutely.
But Fannie Mae caps you. Once you get to house 10, you're kind of
That's
done.
right. They're going to limit you. They're going to want that house to be in your personal name.
Gotcha.
Circle back and tell me the advantages of a DSCR loan for a more seasoned investor.
Okay, good question, Jeff. So the DSCR, the big plus for that is if you've got an investor or a self-employed person who can't show on their tax return enough net profit to qualify, or they don't want to have to come up with a truckload of documents, DSCR is a wonderful opportunity for them to get a loan without having to come up with a lot of documents. Another advantage for the DSCR loan is that they're not restrictive on the fact that your property, you want to put it in an LLC versus have it in your personal
Or that
name.
you're self-employed and basically income documentation is a lot less with DSCR.
It is a lot less
So
on
it's
the
good for
income.
self-employed people who have
Right.
complications getting loans because obviously, as we all know, we write off everything we can from our shoelaces to our hair cream.
Yeah, and you got a great CPA. It makes it hard on us mortgage officers. Somebody who owns a lot of property, they don't want to have to come in with all the documentation on every property they own. A DSCR allows them that streamlined, quick, easier way to get in and get the loan and get closed.
But you pay for that convenience.
You do pay a little bit more, but if you really look at it, it's not that much. Right now, we have an unusual situation in that the mortgage rate for someone with a high credit score is almost, on some of these that I did off of your website, the rate was actually the same for DSCR versus a Fannie Mae fully documented loan. Well, why is that? That's because mortgage rates based on the bond market have actually moved up since the time the Fed went down.
Really?
But the DSCR are based on lenders that are using closer to the Fed rate model. So there's not that much difference right now. Now, a lot of times you're going to pay a whole half a point or more higher on the rate for DSCR, but right now it's about the same.
But again, we determined that on a half a point for a $120,000 house is minuscule.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
cash flow wise, there's not a massive difference. Maybe out of pocket at closing, there's a 15% versus 20% down. So Fannie Mae could give you a little bit less cash out of pocket, which
Correct.
most investors want to put as little bit of cash as they can into these properties. So to me, it just sounds like it's just they need to get in touch with you,
Right.
Joe, and just have you kind of evaluate their credit score and their income, and if they've got current rental properties, and determine what product works for them.
We have a set of discovery questions that we ask investors that help us pinpoint at least one or two of the best products that are going to fit for that investor on making that property affordable today. But knowing what their next 5-year game plan is also helps seal the deal on which product we're going to choose for them. Obviously, whether they're going to fix and flip or whether they're going to buy and hold. I mainly work with investors who buy and hold.
Okay. Well, it looks to me like we're going to go longer than what our podcast producer allows. So I would like for you to give out your website, contact information real quick.
I'm Joe Garner. I'm a mortgage officer and an investor, jogarner.com.
We're going to continue this in the next episode of our podcast. Go to mymemphisinvestmentproperties.com. We got a for sale page. All of our off-market stuff is listed up there with descriptions. It's listed up there with photographs. It'll give you what the current rent is or what the market rent's supposed to be. So you can just run your basic numbers right there before calling us. So go to mymemphisinvestmentproperties.com, 901-692-7401.
For more common sense real estate tips, listen and subscribe at 5o'clocksomewherepodcast.com. The 5 O'Clock Somewhere Real Estate Investor Podcast is a Sound Ideas Group production.